Manfred Weber, head of the largest faction in the European Parliament, said in an interview with Germany's Welt that, in the future, he would like to see soldiers with European flags on their uniforms. According to Weber, the militaries of EU countries will be commanded by the European Chief of Staff. The countries of the community will be obliged to make joint purchases of weapons, mainly from European countries, and the head of the faction, to which Civic Platform belongs, does not want constant reliance on the United States for the security of the old continent. Anyone who tries to impose other competences on the European Union, that is, to deprive member states of the right to an independent security policy, violates the Treaty on the European Union. And this must be made clear. Mr. Weber at the moment is undermining, violating the Treaty on the European Union. What exactly the European Chief of Staff is supposed to do is not fully known. It is known that there is nothing about such a function in the European Union treaties currently in force. He will issue orders. He will decide on the deployment of the army in Poland, on garrisons, where they will function, what weapons there will be in Poland. Will he also decide in what places, if any, in case of aggression to fight or withdraw, what to give to the enemy, what to fight for? Of course he will, because these are decisions of the commander. It is known that German corporations are ready to take over responsibility for arms production for the troops of the entire European Union. Using European money, Germany wants to finance a project to revive the German economy, militarize Europe, and put the keys to a new military power in German hands. And Germany will play this in terms of international power. The Germans and the French have noticed it. They just thought there is good business to be done. And since they have the kind of Prime Minister they have in Poland, whom they installed here, they figured they would force such regulations on him. Germany does this with every crisis. With a pandemic or with the energy transition, it is always the provisions of EU law that are directed at making money for the Germans. Because the words of the head of the European People's Party appear to be an extension of the provisions of the European Parliament's resolution on defence adopted last week. It includes a plan to abolish unanimity in the European Union on defence issues and joint purchases of equipment for the EU's military, implemented by the European Commission. Here we have a really very complicated mosaic of interests for which it is impossible to build a common defence. What could be done is to build a little more interoperability, to do joint exercises a little more often, to harmonise common standards a little better for what is a NATO institutional framework. It is not Germany but Poland, since the government of the United Right, that leads NATO in terms of the percentage of GDP devoted to defence. And the latest equipment in Poland's army comes from the United States and South Korea. The idea is to build a common army, to build mechanisms where Brussels will make military decisions on behalf of the whole of Europe. But it is also supposed to be a mechanism that will push the Americans out of Europe and will de facto build a second defence arrangement. Because there are calls coming from Brussels for supposed independence from the United States, the strongest NATO member. Anyone who tries to create some kind of intermediate structure between NATO headquarters and individual states simply undermines the Washington Treaty, undermines the point of the North Atlantic Alliance. Since Vladimir Putin wants to push the Americans out of Europe, this is reason enough not to accept it, for Moscow believes that without the Americans it will get along sometime in the future, just as it always has got along with Berlin, Paris or Brussels as well. So these ideas of Manfred Weber, Donald Tusk, boss within the European People's Party, are moving in this direction, because it seems that under the slogans European Chief of Staff, European Army or only European purchases, the interests of the dominant European community of Berlin are hiding. This is an extremely dangerous process because the foundation of national competence is the ability to manage our own security system. And if Donald Tusk allows these German plans to go into effect, it will mean a de facto loss of our sovereignty. The basis of a state is an independent authority, national borders and an army. The words of the head of the strongest faction of the European Parliament and the previously adopted resolution seem to be a continuation of the further federalization of Europe. It is in Germany's interest, it is in Russia's interest to weaken the Polish state. And here is a historic opportunity resulting from the functioning of the German government in Poland, in fact. That is, to take power over Poland. And this is what the upcoming presidential election in Poland is about. Donald Trump spent the weekend at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, but it wasn't to relax. He and his closest associates devised a plan for negotiations with Russia on a ceasefire in Ukraine.
I learned a lot. We're doing pretty well, I think, with Russia. We'll see if we have something to announce maybe by Tuesday. I'll be speaking to President Putin on Tuesday, and a lot of work's been done over the weekend. We want to see if we can bring that war to an end. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I think we have a very good chance.
It will not be a face-to-face meeting, but a telephone conversation, which was also confirmed by the Kremlin. The United States administration is not revealing any details, but Trump's associates are working on drafting an agreement that would provide a chance for a ceasefire.
This war's been going on for 3 years, so I think the question, and with no end in sight at this point, without this intervention by President Trump. So I think the question is, the fundamental question really is not how long. I think the question is, are we actually moving towards a ceasefire, or is this a delay tactic? I'm not going to answer that because I can't characterize that for you right now.
Donald Trump's conversation with Vladimir Putin could be the real breakthrough that is being awaited not just by Ukraine's war-stricken civilians, but also the soldiers who are withdrawing from enemy territory in the Kursk region. Trump has the leverage to achieve a truly lasting peace in Ukraine.
Pytanie, jaką kartą zagra tutaj Donald Trump? Z jednej strony...
The question is, what cards will Donald Trump play here? On the one hand, he can be the good cop who promises to loosen some sanctions, while on the other hand, he can show himself to be the tough guy who can hit Russia even harder economically and, by loosening restrictions on arms supplies, further strengthen Ukraine's defense forces. There is not much that Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky agree on, but they do agree on one thing.
And really, as both President Putin and Zelensky said on our first call just a few weeks ago, only President Trump could drive this to an end.
On what terms? It is not yet clear, but the most important goal for Donald Trump is to stop the war.
Well, I think we'll, be talking about land. It's a lot of land. It's a lot different than it was before the wars, And we'll be talking about land. We'll be talking about power plants. That's that's a big question. But I think we have a lot of it already discussed very much by both sides.
Donald Trump's envoys have managed to convince the Ukrainian delegation that the only solution is a peace agreement with Russia and close cooperation with the United States. Now Washington faces a much more difficult task. Since the talks in Jeddah, the American proposal for a ceasefire on the front line, Russia has stolen another week of war, because that's what Russia wants. But we are ready to do everything to make the truce arrangements effective. Brussels officials, who have failed for 3 years to bring about a truce in Eastern Europe, are now counting on the Trump administration to do the hard part of the job, because continuing this war of attrition serves no one.
We really welcome the Jeddah talks and the result of it. Now we need to really see that the ball is in Russia's court and what kind of conditions they are presenting, which is a big question whether they want peace.
These will not be easy talks, but the lives of vulnerable civilians are at stake. Trump wants a quick end to the war, while Russia wants to drag out the end of the war. These are divergent interests. But Donald Trump doesn't like it when someone tries to derail his plans. So if Russia rejects the truce, Putin may get hit with a series of economic blows he won't get back up from.
Houthi militants in Yemen have attacked a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Red Sea. It is from its deck that the airstrike operation against rebel bases is being carried out. According to Washington, the operation will continue until the militants halt their attacks on ships passing near Yemen. According to commentators, this operation could be the beginning of a broader operation by U.S. forces in the Middle East. Aerial bombardments and rocket fire from U.S. destroyers. On the Pentagon's target, military bases of rebels who have been terrorizing the region for years by attacking Western-flagged ships.
This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. And the difference here is, one, going after the Houthi leadership, and two, holding Iran responsible. It is Iran that has repeatedly funded, resourced, trained, and helped the Houthis target not only U.S. warships, but global commerce.
The actions of Houthi militants have led to a significant decline in the number of ships crossing the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. There have been repeated attacks, kidnappings for ransom, and shelling of commercial vessels in the Bab al-Mandab Strait. The Houthis support Hamas and Hezbollah, but first and foremost, Iran. According to Washington and Tel Aviv, they belong to the Middle East's axis of evil. However, they pose a greater threat than the terrorists from Lebanon or Gaza.
Are you concerned about any retaliatory measures taken at all?
No, I'm not. Really, I'm not.
Retaliation, however, came sooner than expected. The Houthis launched more than a dozen drones and missiles at a U.S. strike group in the Red Sea. The main target was the aircraft carrier USS Harry Truman. All targets were neutralized by the U.S. Air Force, but this attack shows that the militants have both the forces and the means for such strikes. We will respond to escalation with escalation. We will respond to the American enemy by attacking its aircraft carriers, its warships, its ships. It will be subject to a shipping ban, and we still have further options for escalation. Observers agree that the U.S. strike on Yemen is the first step in a crackdown on Iran. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon, from this point forward, as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. Washington may be planning to gradually cut off more and more of Tehran's links with militias in the region to finally crack down directly on the Iranian regime.
On the 17th of March, we celebrate St. Patrick's Day, the patron saint of Ireland. The celebration is both religious and cultural. It is the most important holiday, of course, for the Irish, who have the day off from work. Thousands gathered on the streets of Dublin to take part in the annual St. Patrick's Day parade.
I think it's just the atmosphere of the day and celebrating the culture of Ireland. It's great to see people of all different corners of the world getting together, celebrating Irish culture and being in Dublin all together. Nothing beats it. I've been doing it for the guts of nearly 27 years.
I like how everyone just comes together, I think. Like, I've seen people from like all over the world even come, and it's just nice to see everyone like know that we're here too. Like, do you know what I mean? Support a holiday from here. I think that's nice.
It means something like it's like being somewhere where you belong. It's like this one place you've heard about it, and it's like there's St. Patrick's Day parades all over the world, but this is like Dublin. It's the original one, the big one.
The whole world celebrates with the Irish. St. Patrick's Day celebrations are particularly popular in the United States. A parade in honor of St. Patrick passed through the streets of many cities in the U.S., including New York, Boston, and Chicago. Per tradition, the river was dyed green in Chicago. New York City hosts one of the largest and oldest parades in the United States, as it dates back to 1762. Marching bands, performers, and politicians all walk the parade route to celebrate Irish heritage, along with members of the New York City Fire and Police Departments. Sightseers line the streets of Manhattan to celebrate all things Irish, drawing visitors from around the U.S. and internationally. The parade usually draws upwards 150,000 people each year.
It's amazing how many people are here, so it's just incredible. Yeah, it's the most beautiful show I ever seen. Yes.
This is amazing. This is really good. A lot of good energy, great people, amazing bands, and the whole parade is really great.
I just love everything about it. Honestly, it's something that I've never seen before, something that, you know, it's always been something to be here and try to, like, enjoy the culture.
Meanwhile, Great Britain's Princess Kate attended a St. Patrick's Day parade at Wellington Barracks in London. She handed out traditional sprigs of shamrock to members of the Irish Guards and enjoyed a half pint of the famous Guinness dark beer, also known as stout.